So Andrew, what do you think is sustainability in architecture?
Great quote that I like is sustainability is like teenage sex. Everybody says they're doing it. Very few people actually are, and those that are doing it badly.
Right, so is that why you're branded as a sustainable architect?
I'm not a sustainable architect.
I'm
an architect.
That says it all.
And anybody that's not dealing with sustainability isn't doing their job. All right, so we need to save the goddamn planet. Things heating up. We're looking at an extinction event. The building industry uses a huge amount of carbon. It's one of the biggest contributors. Our homes, one of the biggest contributors to carbon emissions. So sustainability is a fundamentally important issue. I know you have got this problem, as I do too, this idea of sustainable architecture being a discrete thing.
Yeah, why is that? I mean, shouldn't sustainability be, like all architecture should be sustainable? Like, why is it a special label to it?
Yeah, a subcategory like commercial architecture or education or interiors.
Yeah, it's an award. Yeah, it's a separate thing.
Yeah, but that makes sense to me because really it's trying to, the awards is trying to celebrate one exemplar example of sustainability. And having been on a jury, you know, we do everybody should be taking into account the sustainability of a project. So it should be embedded in that. But it is troubling when you see it being celebrated as something that's different, unique.
Yeah, it's as if its own sort of stylistic language.
Yeah,
so it's a sustainable. Yeah. I keep doing this. Sustainable. Yeah, it is troubling. Like I often ask students what interests them in architecture at the moment, and often they just say sustainability. I think, well, that's great. It should be. I think all buildings should be. But what inspires them in architecture? They don't have an answer. It's again, going back to food analogies, it's like sustainable meal. Yeah, sure. Food miles, great. You know, sustainable source, great. Yeah, food ethics, you know, all that stuff, great. It should be done. But, you know, does it guarantee a great meal? You can make a smoothie that tastes as good as mud. Yeah. It's good for you. It's good for the environment. But is it actually tasty stuff?
Well, does it? Yeah. So therefore, is it architecture?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a really fun thing to do, you should do this, is Google sustainable house or sustainable home. And it's amazing what comes up. You get the very aestheticized versions. It's got hay bales, so therefore it's sustainable.
Yeah, it's got windmills.
Yeah.
Solar panels.
Covered in solar panels. Or then you get, what I love is the houses that are just massive McMansions. Yeah. They're huge but they've gone and covered them in solar panels and things like that to call them sustainable.
Yeah, well, that's to do with the whole flawed system of the rating system, right?
Oh, it's absolutely
The
broken.
star rating system is based on North America and Europe, where it's designing this refrigerator, this insulated box. You know how well insulated it is, and it is about ticking boxes. I mean, you know, the government do need to make some choices to get things happening, and they have to put in a system. But of course, with that means the loopholes, and that system is not great.
Yeah, and it doesn't allow you to manipulate between elements. So, for example, if you're on a tight inner city site where you have difficulty getting good passive solar gain happening, so you have to account for it in other ways. There's no nuance to allow you to say, well, I've compensated in these other ways. It really is just a tick box system.
Yeah, because also even the idea of cross ventilation is not in it. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's right.
No, it's just insulated box.
Thermally broken frames and, you know, what rating of insulation, what rating of glazing you've got.
And we've got great examples in Australia, certainly I'm sure in other parts of the world as well, but certainly from the 60s, you know, this already started looking at cross ventilation and sustainable, proper shading, proper orientation.
Yeah.
You know, there's a refocus of that.
One of the points that you've made a lot, which I really like, is what's the sustainability equation when it comes to good design? So if you create something that, like this building, that isn't covered in solar panels, hasn't got the latest tech in terms of insulation and batteries and all of that, does that make this an unsustainable building? Well, longevity is a huge part of the sustainability equation, and one that just doesn't play into the rating system at all. So a building that sticks around for 100 years and functions adequately is going to be far better than one that is a huge, monster of a house, for example, that's 8 stars, brand new, and you knocked down a perfectly adequate brick building to create that. So what we will try to do, Empire House is a good example of this in Canberra, where the existing structure, this little cottage, we couldn't afford to replace the glazing, so it's single glaze still, but that house can be cordoned off into different zones. So the new zones are incredibly well insulated, really energy efficient. So in winter, you can actually discreetly heat those rather than the entire house.
Yeah, and I guess different people have different thermal preferences as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the rating system doesn't really allow for that easily, though, is it? It's where we go this way. Yeah, we're going around circles. Literally, we're talking around circles. No, but the rating system don't seem to allow for that. It's easier, much easier, if you just completely demolish it and just build this gigantic thing and
you can
stick
build
all the stuff in it.
Yeah, you can build a super duper 8-star house that costs millions of dollars. Think about the carbon debt, the carbon cost of the capital that's used to create that building. That's the other thing too. I think there's an ethical position to be made for making sure you're really strategic about how you spend the budget, because that has a carbon debt as well. So you build these huge 8-star homes, and they just don't add up. But in terms of the rating system, it's like, yep, perfect, you nailed it.
Size is another thing. I think in Australia we have the largest houses in the world. 280 square meters, I think it's the average size.
Yeah, and it's really hard to get a brief that's even that. Like, there's a lot of client briefs that are bigger than that.
Wow, really?
And why? Like, a lot of it's cultural, a lot of it's is FOMO, the Joneses.
I think there's also the fact that, when you are not used to seeing quality of spaces, you don't know good quality spaces. The other easiest one is size.
Yeah.
Quantity of space.
Yeah.
To compensate for the quality of space.
And a lot of people come to us saying, just give us what we need and nothing more, and we want outdoor space, so we don't want a big house because we won't have a bigger backyard, but you can see the stress they get over time because everything looks small on a plan. That's the reason we use VR a lot, so people can see the proper scale of the space.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's a VR episode.
Yeah, there it is.
Top of my head.
You made me lose my point, Kevin. I've lost my point.
What's the main thing?
The main thing is the golf. So, as I was saying, you've got to make sure, and this is the trick, you've actually got to lock your index finger and your baby finger when you swing so that you don't get too much rotation for your hand separating.
Longevity of design. This building here, for example, we're walking into. Do you know anything about this?
Mad Max.
Yeah, the original Mad Max.
The original Mad Max.
Yeah.
This was the police car depot, wasn't it?
That's right.
The word is considered disrespectful, and citizens should actively be discouraged from its use.
It's one of the best spaces in Melbourne.
It is.
And it's always open. So whenever you're near Melbourne Uni, just wander through. Big houses can also be about conspicuous consumption, which is really sort of entrenched in our culture, I think. A lot of people want to show off, and they do that through their houses. Sustainability, by its very nature, has to be anti-consumption. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Those things are anti-capitalist statements. They're about winding down the economy to try and protect things. So that's not allowed to happen because we live in this capitalist society that's so protected. So what does capitalism do so well? It takes those ideas that critique them and it recycles them to sell out as a product. And that's what we see in sustainability now, is this whole new product range coming out, this whole new form of manufacturing and consumption. So you solve the problem
and new technologies.
Exactly, you solve the problem by buying more shit. You don't, when in fact, the solution seems to be borrowing these age-old ideas. Houses have been built a certain way for 1,000 years.
Yeah, like a Greek house. I remember in the lecture they showed a fandangled sustainable house with all the wind turbines and stuff, and then they showed a Greek house, traditional Greek house that's been there for, hundreds of years. You know, there are thousands of years of design knowledge in that, in its climate, in its condition,
Yep.
and how people lived, and it works.
It's been there for a long time, so its carbon debt's been spread over a long time. It's really easy to maintain. It's really easy to repair. It faces the sun. It deals with through breezes. These are all the things you pay your architect to do. You don't pay them to go shopping for you. Like, we have not specified solar panels on a house because the whole solar panel industry is about retrofitting. It's about getting existing stock and saying, oh, do you want to add some solar panels to it? So why pay me for that? That's not what I should be paid for. I should be paid for the intellectual sort of rigor of exploring an idea, site, and producing ideas that optimize the use of that space and use those entrenched ideas about good passive sustainability. When I think about sustainability as consumption, like, you know, look at this image that Kev's about to overlay with all these solar panels and batteries and all this stuff is very important, but it's not architecture. All this stuff that you can buy and add to your building. I often think about Che Guevara. Che Guevara, the anti-capitalist revolutionary, he gets murdered by the CIA, and then suddenly he's on every goddamn t-shirt. And then you look at all the other products that come out too. Like, there's an energy drink that's got his face on it. There's sneakers, there's guitars, there's all sorts of crap. There's toys, really cool action figures. And so capitalism has taken this figure that wanted to burn down the capitalist system, that critiqued it, and just went, I can market you, I can push you back out, not solve a single problem, but I can make money off it. And I think that's what we're looking at when it comes to consumption as a solution for sustainability.
How big is this tree?
That's a big tree.
That trunk is huge.
It's sequestering a lot of carbon, plant trees. What about sustainability porn? You see some projects that where they've got these uber sustainability features. They sometimes can be quite amusing, sad, when you scrutinise them a bit.
Yeah, because sometimes the problem that they're trying to solve is something that they designed in the first place.
Example?
I'm not going to name.
Name names.
I'm not going to name names.
He's not going to do it. But yeah, you see it a lot. You see, especially with big, significant buildings, you will see sometimes where they've orientated a certain direction, which is just.
Let's have this beautiful, west-facing facade full of glass.
Yeah, west-facing facades in Australia, craziness. And then it's like,
or anywhere in the world,
you know
really.
what? We'll be really sustainable, and we'll cover this in all of these, you know, incredibly expensive louvers, you know, made out of aluminium or something like that, because it's cheaper and lighter.
Yeah, and solar voltaic systems.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah, exactly. And it becomes really easy again. The checklist. Look at the shading. Look at the solar collection, and you sort of go, well, you know, if you designed it more thoughtfully, you can get rid of a lot of that crap. You can't sell it as easy because it doesn't have the bells and whistles on it, but it's a lot simpler, more modest building that is surely performing a lot better.
Yeah, and then there's the ongoing maintenance cost as well. It's not just the initial cost of the building.
Yeah.
It is also the running cost in terms of maintenance costs.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really important equation too, which is actually really hard for clients because sometimes you're always trying to future-proof a building, but they have to weigh up the expenditure now versus the ongoing running costs and the potential to have to do significant updates to their building at a later date. That's a hard discussion to have, especially when you deal with residential architecture, because people are getting mortgaged to the eyeballs. But again, that's where I think just get the basics right first. Anything else after that's a bonus, but don't rely on the toys to tell the story for you. There's other contexts, there's other cultures. You think about somewhere like Tokyo. I think in Tokyo, the average lifespan of a building is 20 years. So it's like, why bother? Like, why bother investing anything into this building? Like, that is just raw consumption. I don't know how you operate in that scenario as an architect, because the idea that what is most sustainable is a simple, well-performing building that lasts for a few hundred years, it's just not going to. I don't know. What do you do about that? Can somebody tell me? Leave a comment.
And then there's a lot of interiors, fit outs that, it's not as if the new design has solved any new spatial problems. It's just a completely aesthetic thing, and they rip out all these beautiful timber and other things and they throw it away and do a new thing. Every few years, that's what restaurants unfortunately do, is a branding thing.
Yeah. So again, it's capitalism and consumption. And this is the problem, is interior decoration becomes about, fad. and you have to replace that thing if you are dealing with something commercial like a restaurant.
So what happens when you, because they are jobs, they are things for the profession.
Yeah.
So when you get given things like that, what do you do?
You make it as sustainable as you can, but this is the thing: sustainability is a range, and it requires some pretty critical thinking. Now, if something's going to be really short term, you think this is probably only going to last 5 years, then what materials are you building out of, and can they have a future purpose? So you've actually got it's actually quite a different scenario to, building an apartment block that's going to have owner occupiers there, and you know it's going to be there for generations.
Well, you hope that.
That's a good segue, because this is the other thing, especially somewhere like Australia where we've got just skyrocketing land prices. A building that is beautifully well made on a high value site with a planning scenario that's shifted on it so it can suddenly have an 8-story building or a 20-story building, I'm sorry, that building is now stuffed. Like, it cannot last long there because there's too much money to be made from it. So the sustainability equation is also a planning issue. Quite often the sites have so much potential yield on them that the architect has no power there, because the economics has been driven by planning decisions. And so that's where I think, this is where we're probably a bit hard on these buildings, these bigger buildings that have got these entrenched issues where they've had to add lots of, sun shading, things like that. But they've also inherited these pretty bad planning decisions. They've had to make the best of a bad lot. So what's your spin on sustainability? Spin, greenwashing, there's a lot of that. What do you think? Leave a comment. Do you think we're completely off target here? Do you think, like some left-wing communists, that the problem is actually with capitalism? We need to reinvent our whole economic cultural system. Do you think we're just buying shit and not solving things? Leave a comment. What do you think of Kevin's hat? I quite like it. I think it's nice.
I'll wear a different hat next time.
Should I wear a hat?
I've been told, one of the comments was it feels a bit like Sherlock and Watson.
Sherlock and Watson?
Yeah.
So who are you? Are you Watson?
Of course.
Oh, so I'm the irreverent, smart one?
Yeah, and unstable.
Unstable? Oh, you, man. What did you do? I'll kill you, man. Do you think I'm unstable? Leave a comment. And I will find you and I will kill you. I need you to listen very carefully. I say this every time, but we mean it. Please leave a comment. Please like, hit the little bell, subscribe. It really helps us out. And there's this thing called Patreon where Kevin's putting some videos up. Don't go there. Don't subscribe. Because sometimes I say shit like and all this kind of stuff, and he just beeps it for YouTube, but it ends up there.
But there's a lot of discussion that's left out.
Oh yeah, there's some interesting things. Yes.
Beautiful building.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Shading. Look at that. Who would have thought Melbourne shading? What?
Not much though.
It's better than none.
Single glazing too.
Yeah.
But it's been there a long time. So it's carbon debt is spread pretty thin.
See you next week.
Bye.
Unstable.